Well, over in Syria, parts of the besieged city of Aleppo were attacked from the air and even the ground.
Another air attack on East Aleppo.
Chlorine gas on Aleppo.
Retake Aleppo.
In war-torn Aleppo.
In Aleppo.
Aleppo. Out Aleppo. And what is Aleppo? You're kidding? No.
Aleppo is a city in northwestern Syria. Before the war, it was the most populous city in Syria. Now, it's the site of a major conflict between Bashar al-Assad's government and anti-government rebels. Aleppo is now the most important front in the Syrian civil war, the main battle in the Syrian civil war. It's currently divided in half, with the western half occupied by Bashar al-Assad and forces aligned to him, and the eastern half controlled by the rebels. The story of Syria's civil war is a story of flip-flops. Early on, it looked like the Assad regime was finished. Intervention by Iran and support by Russia helped prop them up. Then, the rebels, backed by Saudi Arabia and Qatar and several other sides, turned the tides, and this happened a number of different times inside the conflict. September 2015 was a turning point in the battle for Syria. That's when Russia first directly intervened in the conflict with airstrikes. These airstrikes have helped give Assad an advantage. Not a decisive one, he hasn't been able to crush the rebels, but enough to reverse the momentum the rebels had gained prior to that, and to push up towards Aleppo and lay siege to the city's eastern half. A siege involves trapping a group of people, civilians and fighters both, inside a certain territory and denying them supplies until they can no longer fight. Assad's strategy has a vicious logic to it. When you deprive people of food and you bomb them over and over again, they're likely to give in just to make the fighting stop. That's why the rebels care so much about breaking the siege of Aleppo, and why the Assad regime has been so resistant to letting humanitarian supplies go into the city. This has set the stage not only for another bloody military conflict, but a potential humanitarian crisis. The humanitarian situation in Aleppo is a disaster. There are roughly 250,000 people trapped in the city, and the 250,000 people are running dangerously low on supplies, access to clean water and medicine. The last pediatrician in the city has been killed on an airstrike. The United States has the military power to break the siege of Aleppo, but doing so would be extremely dangerous. For one thing, it would need to coordinate with rebels on the ground, some of whom are extremists. For another, it means that the US would be operating in hostile airspace with Russian planes. If the US were to engage with Russian planes, that could theoretically mean direct fire between two nuclear-armed superpowers, a risk that very few people in the United States are willing to take. And three, even if the US did temporarily break the siege, it would have to maintain a commitment in order to ensure that things didn't get worse. That could mean an open-ended war, and there's no guarantee that this would make anything better, but rather might just get more people killed over the long run. The problem with Syria is there's no easy answer, either to Aleppo or to the war in general. The United States can't intervene militarily to stop the fighting without great risk both to Syrians and Americans. Every diplomatic solution tried so far has failed and failed miserably, and there's simply no economic tool that could be used to end the fighting or ease the suffering of the people inside besieged territories. There's no good answer. There's nothing that anyone has that could simply solve the crisis. It's a disaster, and it's a disaster without any end in sight.